Historical myths debunked the real stories behind Paul Revere, the Titanic, Lincoln, and the Berlin Wall. Welcome back to Historical Events Uncovered, the channel where we dive deep into history's most intriguing myths and misconceptions. Today we'll be uncovering the real stories behind 4 iconic moments in history that played out quite differently than we've been told. Paul Revere's Ride. It was the night of April 18th, 1775. American colonists had caught wind of a British mission to seize arms in Concord and capture Samuel Adams and John Hancock. The story goes that Paul Revere made his midnight ride from Boston to Concord, shouting, "The British are coming." However, this tale, popularized by Henry Longfellow's 1860 poem, is more myth than fact. The real story is much more interesting. There was an intricate alert system that Revere had helped develop, involving lanterns, church bells, and alarm guns. Thanks to this system, alarms in Concord had almost certainly gone off before the British finished disembarking from their ships. Revere didn't shout, "The British are coming," because that would have been profoundly foolish. The colonies were still British at the time, and such a warning would have been confusing. Instead, the message was the regulars are coming out passed quietly to key individuals. By the end of the night, as many as 40 men were riding throughout Middlesex County to warn of the British Army's advance. Revere and his fellow riders reached Lexington at around midnight, where they met with Adams and Hancock. They then continued towards Concord but encountered a British roadblock. Dr. Samuel Prescott managed to warn Concord, while Revere was captured and later released by the British. This intricate network of communication and brave efforts of multiple riders, not just Paul Revere, were key in preparing the colonists for the British advance. The Titanic. For decades, it was believed that the Titanic sank solely because it hit an iceberg, which left a 300-foot gash in the hull. However, accounts of survivors, official documents, and the 1985 discovery of the wreckage, which was broken in half, reveal a more complex story. The Titanic was sailing at nearly maximum speed through icy waters. This wasn't uncommon, but it meant ignoring warnings about icebergs. One crucial warning from the ocean liner Mesaba was never seen by the navigation officer due to a typo. Another warning from the nearby Californian was ignored by the Titanic's radio operator. Even with these warnings, the lookouts should have seen the iceberg. Unfortunately, it was a calm, moonless night, making the iceberg nearly invisible, and the lookouts didn't have binoculars, as the key was missing. When the iceberg was finally spotted, the first officer ordered the engines cut and a sharp turn, but the ship still struck the iceberg. Contrary to popular belief, the impact was hardly noticeable for many on board. The construction of the Titanic also played a role. The steel was brittle in cold temperatures, and many of the rivets were iron, which was especially brittle. Some rivets were reportedly leaking seawater even before the collision. Additionally, the Titanic had been on fire for days, weakening its structure. The fire, likely started in the coal stores, raged until the day before the crash, warping bulkheads and contributing to the eventual flooding. Despite these issues, the final tragedy was made worse by the lifeboats. There weren't enough for everyone, and many were launched half-empty as passengers and crew didn't realize the severity of the situation. Abraham Lincoln and the Emancipation Proclamation. Abraham Lincoln is often hailed as the great emancipator, but the truth is more complex. The Emancipation Proclamation, issued on January 1st, 1863, did free many slaves, but it was primarily a strategic military decision, only applying to Confederate states in rebellion. Lincoln's views on race were also more nuanced than often portrayed. In a speech less than 5 years before the proclamation, he stated, "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races." While morally opposed to slavery, Lincoln didn't believe in full equality. The Emancipation Proclamation aimed to weaken the Confederacy and bolster Union forces with freed slaves. Slavery in the U.S. wasn't abolished until the 13th Amendment, ratified over 8 months after Lincoln's assassination. Even then, it allowed for involuntary servitude as punishment for crimes, a loophole that persists today in prison labor practices. The fall of the Berlin Wall. The fall of the Berlin Wall is often romanticized as a dramatic moment of liberation. Some imagine aggressive protesters overpowering guards, inspired by Ronald Reagan's famous demand, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." But the reality was far less cinematic and more a result of miscommunication. The events leading to the wall's fall began in June 1989, when Hungary dismantled its electrified fence with Austria, leading thousands of East Germans to flee. By October, Egon Krenz replaced East Germany's leader and decided to allow direct travel between East and West Germany to ease the strain. On November 9th, Krenz's plan was to take effect the next day, but during a press conference, spokesman Gunter Schabowski, who hadn't been fully briefed, mistakenly announced the new travel regulations as immediate. tens of thousands flocked to the Berlin Wall that evening. The guards, unaware of the new policy, were overwhelmed. Unwilling to issue a shoot-to-kill order, they ultimately stepped aside, allowing the masses to cross, and November 9th went down in history as the day the Berlin Wall fell. History is full of myths and misconceptions, but by uncovering the truth, we gain a deeper understanding of the past. Thanks for joining us on Historical Events Uncovered. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. See you next time.